We were 10 miles from the nearest neighbor, so who, exactly, was watching us from the cellar window? Marcus and I wanted a break. That's all this trip was supposed to be, a quiet weekend away from the noise, from the city, from people. I found the cabin online. Rustic, secluded, perched on a slope in the middle of nowhere in northern Minnesota. The listing emphasized solitude like it was a feature. No Wi-Fi, no cell signal, just trees, a fireplace, and a sky full of stars. We arrived just before dusk on a Thursday in late October. The road to the cabin narrowed into a dirt path flanked by pines, eventually giving way to a clearing where the cabin sat, old wooden beams, peeling paint, moss crawling up one side. But it had character. It smelled like pine and old books inside. There was a fireplace, a full pantry, even a record player with a stack of dusty vinyls. I liked it. The only thing that felt off was the small window in the back, low to the ground, half covered by brush. It led into what looked like a bricked-over cellar. I mentioned it to Marcus, but he just shrugged. Probably just storage, he said, tossing his bag on the couch. That first night was uneventful. We made dinner, opened a bottle of wine, and listened to a crackling old jazz record while the fire snapped and hissed behind the grate. At one point, I stood up to poke at the logs, and as I turned to sit back down, something in the reflection of the glass door caught my eye movement. A shift, a flicker of something just outside. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there. No wind, no branches swaying. I even walked to the back door and stepped out with a flashlight. Just woods, darkness, the faint crunch of dead leaves beneath my boots. That's when I saw the handprint on the cellar window, clear as day. 5 smudged fingers pressed to the inside of the glass. Small, human, recent. I froze, the cold air burning my nose, my lungs. I stared for what felt like minutes, until the flashlight flickered and Marcus called out from inside. He came out when I didn't respond. I showed him the window. He leaned in close, squinting. Old print, he said. Might have been from the last guests, from inside, I asked. He hesitated, then shrugged again. Maybe the cleaner. Come on, it's freezing. Back inside, I couldn't shake the unease. That night, I barely slept. The wind howled. The cabin creaked in the kind of way that makes your imagination run wild. Just after 3 a.m., I heard it, a soft scrape, like nails on wood, directly beneath us. I held my breath and listened. Another scrape, a slow, deliberate shift. Not an animal, not a branch, something moving under the floor. In the morning, Marcus tried to laugh it off, but even he looked tense. I made coffee while he walked around the cabin outside, inspecting. When he came back, his face was pale. There's muddy prints near the back door, he said. Human, barefoot. We followed them. They started at the cellar window, led to the back steps, then off into the woods. They didn't come from the trees. They started at the house. We didn't say much after that. We sat on the porch for a long while, barely touching our breakfast. Eventually, Marcus walked around to the cellar door, a thick wooden hatch nestled in the earth. Nailed shut, he said. But the nails looked bent, rusted, pulled and hammered back in again, like someone had opened it. More than once, we packed, argued quietly about leaving. But it was a long drive, no signal, no way to call the owner until we hit town, and we had one more night. Just one dot. By sunset, the trees looked like black teeth gnashing against the horizon. The wind had picked up. The cabin creaked louder now, each sound amplified by the tension settling between us. We barely spoke. Marcus kept the fireplace roaring. I pretended to read. Then, around 1:15 a.m., the house fell utterly still. No wind, no crackling fire, just silence. That's when I heard it, breathing, not mine, not Marcus's. It came through the hallway floor vent, slow, heavy, close. I stared at the vent like it might speak. Marcus was frozen too, pale as the ash. In the hearth, neither of us moved. The breathing went on for nearly a full minute, then stopped. We didn't sleep at first light. We packed and left everything else behind. Food, toiletries, the unopened second bottle of wine. I didn't even look at the cellar window as we drove away. We stopped at the first gas station with a signal and called the property owner. He was calm, almost too calm. Probably animals, he said. Critters like to nest under the old floorboards. They make all sorts of weird sounds. I told him about the footprints, the window handprint, the breathing. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, it's been checked before. Cleaned. I promise it's safe. We didn't push it. A week later, I got an email from the booking site, a generic request for a review. Attached was a photo, supposedly from a motion sensor camera mounted near the front porch. In the image, Marcus and I are standing just outside the front door, arms around each other, grinning, our bags at our feet. I remember that moment. We'd just arrived. The air smelled like pine. I was excited, relaxed, but in the far left pane of the window behind us, barely visible in the glass, is a figure, a person, standing inside the cabin, watching us. It kept calling my name, but no one else was supposed to be there. I didn't go out to the cabin to scare myself. I went to get away. I'd just finalized a divorce after a marriage that had dragged me down for years. Too many arguments, too many silences. When my cousin offered me the use of his off-grid place in Oregon, I didn't hesitate. Just a few days of quiet. No cell signal, no work emails, no one asking me how I was holding up. The cabin sat deep in the woods, about a TV ride off the nearest road. No neighbors, just trees and quiet. It was exactly what I needed. I arrived on a Thursday afternoon. The place was rustic but solid. Wooden frame, screened porch, a little wood stove inside. The generator worked, the water tank was full, and I had enough food and coffee for a long weekend. That first day was peaceful. I chopped some wood, read a few chapters of an old sci-fi novel on the porch, and watched the sun dip below the treetops. I cooked on the camp stove, poured a glass of bourbon, and sat by the fire pit out back. There was nothing but the sound of the forest settling in for the night, insects, the occasional rustle of leaves. But then I heard it, a woman's voice, soft, drawn out, coming from somewhere near the trees, maybe 30 yards out. I froze. At first, I thought I'd imagined it. It was so faint, I almost laughed it off. Maybe the fire popping, maybe a bird call carried wrong on the wind. But then it came again, Bayin. This time, clearer. Same tone, same stretch of my name. And it definitely came from the trees. I stood up, heart suddenly hammering. I called out, "Hello," but got nothing back. No footsteps, no branches snapping, just the fire crackling. Behind me, I told myself it was probably a sound carried from miles away. Sound does weird things in the woods. Echoes off the trees. Carries strangely at night. Still, I went inside and locked the door. That night, I barely slept. I lay on the old twin bed, listening to every creak and rustle outside. Around 2 a.m., I heard it again. The voice. Same tone, same slow, drawn-out pronunciation of my name. Yin, always from outside. Never near a window, just present, lingering. I never answered that time. By morning, I convinced myself it had to be the wind. Or maybe I'd been dreaming. But when I stepped outside, I saw the fire pit had been disturbed. The stones around it were shifted, the logs kicked aside, and my axe, the one I'd leaned against the porch rail, was lying in the dirt about 10 feet away. Not stolen, not hidden, just moved. It felt intentional. I thought maybe a bear had gotten curious, but the axe was too deliberate, too specific. That afternoon, I hiked to a ridge about a mile away that my cousin had mentioned. He said you could sometimes get 1 bar of cell signal up there. I brought my phone and stood in the clearing for over an hour, waving it like an idiot, but nothing came through. Just that dead signal bar and the occasional buzz of a trapped fly. When I got back to the cabin, the unease hadn't left that evening. The forest felt off. I know that sounds vague, but it's the only way I can explain it. Like it was holding its breath. Birds didn't chirp, leaves didn't rustle. The only sound was the distant gurgle of the stream down the hill and the occasional creak of the porch boards under my feet. Then, just after dusk, it started again. But this time, it wasn't just from one direction. It came from the left of the cabin. Then again, from the right. 2 voices, identical tone, same rhythm, calling my name, almost like they were in sync, not overlapping, just alternating. I turned. On the porch light, nothing. I tried the side floodlight, but it didn't turn on. I checked the generator. It was dead. I hadn't heard it shut off. I couldn't even get it to click. Same with the battery-powered lantern I'd left charging. It was like something had planned for this. I locked the doors, shut all the windows, and sat in the center of the cabin with a hunting knife in my lap. Every few minutes, the voice would return, one from the front, one from behind the cabin, always calling my name, never louder, never closer. Just there. I didn't sleep. I didn't even sit down. I paced. I gripped the knife so hard, my hand cramped. And every time I considered opening the door, something in me screamed not to. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was dread, deep in my gut. A feeling like opening that door meant something permanent. At some point, around 4:30 a.m., the voices stopped. No fading, no trailing off, just silence. In the trees, leaves crunching, a shift of weight, not running, not rushing, just slow, careful steps receding. When the first gray hints of dawn crept through the windows, I didn't wait. I packed everything I could in 5 minutes flat, threw it on a TV, and drove. Fast, too fast for that trail. I nearly flipped twice, but I didn't stop until I saw the welcome sign for the nearest town. I went straight to the ranger station. I told the guy on duty what had happened. To his credit, he didn't laugh, just listened, nodding slowly. When I finished, he said something I'll never forget. "You're not the first." I asked what he meant, and he told me that people who hike or camp in that area, particularly near the North Ridge, sometimes report hearing things, voices, their names, especially if they're alone. Usually hikers, he said. A few don't come back. I asked if it was some kind of predator, but he just shook his head. Nothing leaves tracks. Nothing shows on trail cams. Just noise. When I got home, I couldn't stop thinking about the small motion-activated camera I'd brought. It had been mounted near the tree line where the trail started. I popped the SD card into my laptop. Dozens of blank frames, except one in the center of the frame. Barely visible between two trees was a figure, not moving, just standing there, facing the cabin, head tilted, watching, waiting. I deleted the image, but I still see it every time I close my eyes. Every time I hear someone call my name. The key didn't fit the lock because someone had already changed it. It was supposed to be a simple girls' weekend. Just me and Olivia, a rented cabin, a couple bottles of wine, and no responsibilities for a few days. We'd been planning it for weeks, a break from work, from social burnout, from everything. The place looked perfect online, tucked away in the North Carolina mountains, private but not too remote, 2 bedrooms, a deck that overlooked the trees. It had good reviews, and the host messaged us back quickly when we booked. We got a late start Friday, traffic, gas stops, a wrong turn near Ash. By the time we pulled off the gravel road and saw the cabin's porch lights through the trees, it was almost 9:30 p.m. The forest was black around us, the air thick with that mountain stillness that always feels a little heavier at night. But we were excited, tired but excited, until the key didn't work. Olivia held the phone up with the host's instructions on screen while I fumbled with the lock. The code was supposed to open a lockbox on the railing, except there was no lockbox, just an empty hook where one should have been. I looked at her, confused. "Try the key," she said, holding it out. I did. It slid into the doorknob, but it wouldn't turn. Not even a wiggle. I tried the deadbolt. Same thing. It was like the key didn't belong there at all. I stepped back and looked at the cabin again. 2 floors, dark wood siding, stone chimney, big picture window. It looked like the pictures from the listing, but something felt off. It was subtle. The porch furniture wasn't the same, and the glass on the rail, a water glass, half full, just sitting there. "Maybe someone's already here," Olivia said, sweeping her flashlight across the upstairs window. There was a faint glow behind the curtain, maybe a lamp, or maybe someone walking around, double booked. I knocked on the door. No answer. We waited. I knocked again, a little louder this time. Still nothing. The porch creaked slightly under our feet, like it didn't want us there. Olivia stepped back. "I don't like this." I didn't either. We walked back to the car and drove a half-mile down the road until our phones caught signal. I texted the host, "Hey, we're at the cabin, but the key isn't working, and it looks like someone's inside." 15 minutes later, I got a response. "That's not the right cabin. Yours is across the creek, red shutters." We both stared at the message. Across the creek. We pulled the listing back up. Photos, map, address. It was exactly where we'd just been. There was no mention of red shutters anywhere, but fine. We drove back up the gravel path. This time, the cabin looked different. The porch light was off. The glass was gone. The upstairs window, dark. We parked a little farther back. Neither of us said much. The only sound was the wind pushing through the trees. The kind of quiet that's not silent, it listens. We stepped onto the porch again. I tried the knob. It opened, just like that. I remember Olivia whispering, "It was locked 10 minutes ago, right?" I nodded. We didn't step inside, not at first. I just pushed the door slightly open with my foot. The place smelled lived in, not dusty or musty like a rental. It smelled like groceries, like laundry, like someone had just stepped out to run an errand. Boots were near the door, a flannel jacket hung on the wall hook, a single mug in the sink, but no sounds, no footsteps, no lights. We left. We followed the gravel farther up the bend, and just before the road narrowed, we saw another trail that cut off toward a small wooden bridge, and on the other side of the creek, there it was, another cabin, similar shape, but smaller, newer. Red shutters. I pulled out the key again. It fit. Lights on, clean kitchen, welcome basket on the counter. No boots. No signs of anyone else. This was definitely the one. The relief hit us so fast, we both laughed out loud, a little nervously. We didn't talk about the first cabin much that night, just chalked it up to a mistake. Maybe the host had a similar rental that used to be listed nearby. Maybe someone was squatting. Or maybe, and this is what Olivia kept repeating, maybe the platform glitched and gave us the wrong map pin. Still, I kept the door locked tight even during the day. The weekend was quiet after that. We hiked a little, watched dumb movies, made pasta. Every once in a while, I'd catch Olivia glancing out the back window toward the trees. I was doing it too, just not saying it out loud. Then, on our last night, something changed. I got up early, maybe 6 a.m., to make coffee. When I stepped outside to grab the cooler from the car, I noticed something on the doormat. Another key, same design, same red plastic tag, just sitting there. No note, no footprints in the dirt. I picked it up. It looked identical to ours. I even unlocked the door with it. It worked perfectly. But ours had been inside on the table all night. I checked the doorcam footage, the one built into the rental tablet. Nothing. Just a blip around 2:40 a.m. Like it lost signal for 5 minutes. I texted the host again. "Hey, weird question. Is someone else staying on the property? We found another key outside this morning." No answer. Not for hours. We packed up early and left before checkout. Something in my gut told me not to wait around. Later that afternoon, I got a short message. "No. One should have had a second key. I'm so sorry." I asked about the first cabin again, the one we'd tried to enter on the first night. This time, the tone changed. That property was delisted 2 months ago. No bookings since. No one should have had access. I asked why it was delisted. Took a while, but finally got a reply. Guest safety concerns. That's all I'm allowed to say. No follow-up. No explanation. The listing disappeared from the app completely. Search history wiped. GPS pin gone. Olivia doesn't bring it up much anymore. Says she doesn't want to think about it. But I still wonder, who was in that cabin? Why was the lock changed? And who left the second key at our door? We thought we'd picked the right place to stay, but someone else had already moved in.